Thanks again, everybody, for joining us today. The Sudo Talk series that we started several months ago is for Mac admins by Apple experts. And today, those Apple experts are myself, John Sutcliffe, the head of product here at Addigy, and I'm joined by Craig Richards, senior product manager. At Addigy, we're focused on the Apple ecosystem. We like to say we eat, sleep, and breathe Apple, and we try to do this every month and try to share with you the insights on changes to the Apple ecosystem, things that are going to impact you and things that are going to impact your end users. And as we all well know, WWDC is one of those big things. So again, we're going to have some information about what next month's Sudo Talk will be at the end of this, so stay tuned for that. This one is the WWDC After Party. We're going to go through, take a look at what we learned and what you need to know as we push forward. So again, John Sutcliffe, I'm the VP of Product, and I'm joined by Craig Richards, Senior Product Manager. Craig is our product manager who does a lot of the work around our MDM infrastructure and our MDM features and whatnot. So that's why he's here with us today. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with software updates. That was a big part of what got talked about this past week and also a big part of last year's WWDC. We're going to do a little bit of a macOS summary, things we found that you're going to need to understand, and some things that are changing that your end users are going to see that are very different for them as well. iOS summary, same thing. We're going to spend some time and talk about Declarative MDM. What's it mean? This has been a big topic. It was introduced a year ago at WWDC, and this year it's available across the board for all features and flavors on the newest operating systems. We also want to spend some time and talk about Addigy identity and the new Apple platform single sign-on. What does that mean for identity? Where are we headed going forward? How do those things play together? We're going to talk about what the beta cycles look like, what you can do to be testing now. We're going to take you through what our testing cycles look like, how we're doing development during this time. We've got a ton of links to various resources that Apple's published throughout WWDC. We'll make those easy for you to be able to get to so you can go dig into things in greater depth. And we're going to have time for Q&A when we get to the end. Also, don't hesitate to drop some Q&A into the chat as well as we go on. Craig and I will try to answer that as we go as best we can. And if we can't, we'll try to get to them at the end of the session during the Q&A. Craig, are we ready?
We're ready. Let's do it.
All right, let's go. Let's go. Software updates. And again, everybody, I just want to repeat how much, how thankful we are for you guys to join us today. Take time out of your busy day to be here. So let's go. So software updates. One of the really cool things we saw that Apple introduced last week is this idea of rapid security response. Over the last few years, the Mac and iOS devices are becoming a bigger and bigger target for malware and just generally attacks overall. Unfortunately, as Macs have gotten more popular, the world has turned their focus to Macs, iOS devices, as well as from the traditional Windows world and those sorts of things. One of the things Apple's doing is coming up with this new rapid security response. Very simply, it's designed for them to be able to ship small incremental software patches that are in response to security. So this would be something that ships off a minor release. So we might be between, for instance, 12.5 and 12.6. Apple uncovers a security vulnerability, and they want to be able to ship that without having to put out a whole 12.6 release. They're adding some security keys in terms of giving you as administrators some control over if those do get installed on devices, and also if your end users could remove them. You could see the case where perhaps a quick security fix comes down, maybe there's an unintended consequence, and you want to be able to get that back off the machine in a hurry so your users can continue. This one's going to be very interesting to test throughout the beta cycles because, again, without a rapid security response, how do you know you're going to get this patch, get it installed, and be able to go through and test these things? So this is something we're really going to be keeping an eye on as we push through the beta cycles. But again, this is a very nice response in terms of being able to keep the operating systems secure, and be able to get software on your machines as quickly as possible when something bad is coming along, like a zero-day exploit. Something you'll be able to see too is today on macOS, in our restrictions payload, in the software updates payload, there is an automatically install critical updates. That's already in the payload. Apple's already taking advantage of that for Mac. On the right side, you're going to see I've got the automatic updates view from a device on iOS 15 and from a device with iOS 16. And you'll see there's a new capability on iOS 16 Plus, the install system and data files. If that's turned on when these rapid responses appear, then they're automatically going to deploy to that machine. We have not yet seen the MDM command to be able to control this yet. We expect that to be something that will come out, but again, we don't know. Again, everything we're talking about today is in beta from Apple, so it's all subject to change. It is under NDA. You need to be in the Apple beta programs, and we'll talk more about that later, how you get signed up for those to be able to get your hands on the software. But again, I thought it was interesting to be able to compare and contrast iOS 15 and what you see today with iOS 16.
Yeah, it's important to note when we talk about this a little bit when we do our how we beta this and test this and do all of that. Apple will do a series of beta releases, and we'll talk more a little bit about that, where these functionality and features may not be here in the first initial beta, but will be here in subsequent betas after that.
All right, the next thing that Apple introduced is something called update priorities. These are new to macOS 13 Plus. And again, this is with minor releases. And by setting this high or low, you're going to be able to control how quickly a minor release gets installed on a machine. By setting this to high, it's going to be the equivalent of if I, as a user, went in my machine, I went to software updates and I said install now. That install is going to begin and it's going to push down. Again, you're going to be able to have control this from within Addigy with your MDM profiles to be able to put it out there. So again, if there's a critical minor release coming out, you may set that to high to push, or maybe you default that to low as we go along, depending where it is. Again, these sorts of settings are why it's very important to get your hands on the betas of macOS 13, iOS, and whatnot, to begin playing with these settings as we go through it, so you can really begin to anticipate how will these behave. We will be doing a lot of work in terms of helping you understand how these will behave and whatnot as we get these put into the product over the course of the summer and into the fall as we approach the release of Ventura. And again, the high or low priority is only for minor updates, so that'd be like a .1, .2, those sorts of things. Manage updates during power nap. So this is something new as well. In the case where if your laptop was in your backpack, if the lid was closed on it, and you as an administrator went into Addigy and you attempted to push out a software update via MDM to that device, if the Mac was closed, you were going to get back an MDM command that essentially said, I can't do anything right now. I'm asleep, not going to go there. Apple has changed this so that in OS 13 and newer, if you send out a scheduled OS update or you query the device for an OS update status, and query the device to see, are there available OS updates? These are things that Addigy does under the hood for you. You're actually going to get a response back, even if that device has its lid closed and it's in a power nap. If it's powered down, they won't respond. But what this is designed to do is when a device may be sleeping, you're going to be able to get that OS update scheduled. It'll put the schedule on there. When that lid is open, it's going to be able to take action. You're also going to be able to get a quick response even if the device is asleep, that perhaps the update did apply, or are there available OS updates for that machine? So this is a handy step forward. The other thing that's coming too, and this has begun to appear with macOS 12.3 and newer. Again, if you go back into the 12 series, it was around .3 and .4 where the MDM update commands really began to behave effectively. They're adding a lot better reporting in terms of what you will be able to see in Addigy. So what you can expect is when you go into Addigy and you're looking at a device, you're going to be able to get a good readout in terms of how many deferrals are left before that user is going to be required to install the update. So again, if you've set the user can defer the OS update 5 times, you're going to get a report of how many times have they got left before it's just going to apply. What are the max deferrals? This is the number of times that you've set up that the user can defer that update before it's going to apply. When is the next time we're going to attempt to do an application of the OS on the machine? So again, if perhaps a user calls in and says, hey, I do want to get this done, I've got a meeting, you can take a quick look at the device and be able to see, oh, the next time we're going to prompt you is tomorrow at 2 p.m. You're going to be able to get this kinds of information. The other thing that's going to be very handy as well is information about past notifications. We're going to be able to provide you with a list of the exact dates and times when an update notification was posted to the end user. So you're going to be able to get a confirmation that, yes, I did prompt you 4 times, just in that off chance that your users may say, I've never seen anything. Not that that would ever happen. But again, should it happen, you're going to look at these kinds of things as we push forward. So some of the things that are becoming. All right, let's now talk a little bit about macOS summary. Some things that are going to impact your workflows or could potentially impact your workflows as we go forward. One of the things today on macOS 12 and older, I always want to say 12 without O and newer, but it's older, is when you go, if you've wiped a machine and you're going through setup again, you can actually bypass the MDM setup on that machine. Get that machine set up, it's not checked back into Addigy, it's not managed. They're shutting that loophole down in macOS 13, and there's no way for you to get through the setup without being attached to the internet, so that device calls back the business manager and confirms that it should be managed by Addigy, you do own that machine, and then it proceeds. If you've removed the device from business manager or school manager, then you'll be able to proceed without internet access, and that'll be fine as you push forward. Again, this has got to be a machine on macOS 13, and it's got to be Silicon or T2 for this to apply. Again, this was an often asked for security. I don't want to call it a vulnerability, but it was a way to be able to get past locking those machines up that were lost or stolen or something. So this is going to close that gap. Pretty powerful. Accessory security. Again, this is something that's been asked for a lot. How do I lock down USBs and things like that? And there's going to be some new things that again, with macOS 13 Plus and on Silicon. It doesn't look like this will work on Intel. It's going to ask anytime a Thunderbolt or USB accessory is plugged in. There are different settings. Ask every time. Ask anytime something's new. Ask when a device is unlocked. Always. There is an MDM command, allow USB restricted mode. And this command already exists in our policy restrictions, or I'm sorry, in our MDM restrictions. We need to experiment with this on physical hardware to be able to get a full idea of how this is going to behave. And again, this is one of those activities we really start to dig into when we're in this beta cycle. We have this new key. This is something that's been asked for. How exactly is it going to behave as we push forward so we can get that information? But again, this is something that your users who, if they upgrade from 12 to 13, they're on a Silicon machine, they plug in a device that they've been confident in before, they may see something new. So this is going to be an opportunity for you to get in front of them and do some training in terms of, hey, here's something new coming along. And we'll really keep our eye on in terms of helping you understand is what can we help you with from an MDM perspective to make this as least intrusive as possible, but ensure your environment is secure. Migration Assistant in macOS 13 Plus is changing too. There's some settings you're no longer going to be able to migrate, which includes system settings, network, and printer. And what this means is MDM is not just going to be something you can transfer between devices. That device is going to have to go through automated device enrollment again to be able to get those things in place. But again, if these were some things you were counting on during the Migration Assistant, you're going to want to take a look at those workflows, experiment with those workflows, and what does this mean? Again, if you're in the case of a printer or a network, these are things that should probably be deploying via MDM anyway. So if you've got those configured there, when that machine re-enrolls, they're going to get those settings put back in place, and away they go. So hopefully that won't be too big a deal. Something to very much be aware of as you push forward. The firewall now, you're going to be able to do a setting to be able to allow signed software through the firewall if you've got that turned off, and it's also system applications that are signed to be able to come through. The other one, this is interesting. A year ago, universal control was introduced, and universal control is very nice. If you've got several machines on your desktop, being able to share your keyboard and your mouse across those devices is fantastic. The flip side is it's also a little bit of a security vulnerability. You walk up to somebody's machine with your keyboard and take control, correct? Again, there's a new MDM command to be able to block that universal control sharing keyboard and mouse to be able to put in there. So look for that coming soon as well. Also, something that will be appearing in the next day or two, we're adding a new fact into the community. Is Ventura compatible? This will be something you can add to your facts, to your community facts within your environment, and it will report back to you if the device that this is running on is a machine that Ventura is compatible with. Again, Ventura is not compatible with all machines for all time. So again, you could build monitoring off of this. Perhaps it's something you want to build flex policies around, using is Ventura compatible, using that to say it's not Ventura compatible, I'm not going to put attempt to install Ventura onto that operating system. Maybe not a great example, but something you can do. You could also use this to start doing some reporting in terms of how many of my devices are Ventura compatible, how many devices am I going to want to be able to get that blocker onto, or is there hardware maybe I need to really start thinking hard about in terms of retiring because I can't get Ventura on it as we push forward. And we know Apple is really pushing harder and harder to make sure people are staying current with operating systems in terms of being able to protect security and all these sorts of things. So something to consider as we push forward. The other thing I wanted to bring up, this is going to be a big change in the UI that your users are going to notice. If you spend a lot of time getting your users trained to be able where to know, to be able to jump into system controls and whatnot, this is brand new in Ventura. It's now system settings, and the first thing you'll notice is it looks a lot like iOS. Apple's been telling us they're bringing the operating systems closer together in terms of look and feel. But it is a very different experience. It's a little jarring. All of us, as we've been installing Ventura, we open it up, we've been like, whoa, what is this? And it's taken a little bit of getting used to be able to start to look at it. So again, this is going to be another opportunity for you to be able to work with the users and start to prepare them for what they're going to see. If they're going to Ventura, this is one of the things they're going to be at to be able to look at. There are some pretty cool things in here. On the screen on the right, you're going to see that now, not only am I seeing login items, but I'm also seeing any launch agents and launch daemons that have been installed on the device as well. You can see in this example, there's an unknown developer. And what this is I'd actually installed a launch agent via Addigy. I've not signed it. And simply what it does is start DEP notify. And when I logged in, I'd gone through an automated device enrollment. I'd logged in to Ventura for the first time, and I actually got a desktop notification that said, you've got a launch agent that is unsigned. Would you like to see it? I clicked it, it brought me in here. Now, it's not telling me a ton of information. I know where to go look and whatnot. But again, this is interesting. So again, as you begin to test your environment, when you get Ventura, when you get iOS, you're going to want to go through and go through your normal installation, the software you put on your devices, and begin to take a look at these areas of the product to see what are you going to see. You may have vendors who aren't properly signing things or whatnot, and you're going to want to get in touch with them ASAP to say, hey, on Ventura, I'm getting an alert when I install your software. This is new in Ventura. Are you aware of it? So that they can be as prepared as you are when we get to the day that Ventura ships as we push forward. So something to really be aware of. All right. Craig, do you want to throw anything else there on the Mac stuff before we dive into iOS?
Yes, there was a quick correction here. We have that community fact published now already. So it's already live. So you can grab it whenever you guys want to see if your devices are Ventura capable.
Awesome, awesome. The other thing you're going to see here is the codes I've added here will be a quick link to some of the documentation. You'll see more of these at the end. Just try to put these in here as we go forward. So they are legit. No one hacked these in, and you're about to pay my children's college education's expense when you follow that and enter your social security number. Although I keep asking Craig for that and he won't do it. So first thing I want to start with was rapid security response. That applies to both iOS and macOS, and we talked about it earlier. So I just wanted to make sure I mention it here as well to be explicit. Again, I think that's a pretty powerful option to be able to help take care of devices. Number two, configurator for iPhone. They have now added the ability to add iOS 16 and iPadOS 16 devices to Apple Business and School Manager. We have a KB on that. It explains how to go about it. This was added last year to be able to add Mac devices that you had purchased through some other means outside of Apple Business Manager. The caveat is the 30-day exception still applies. So for instance, if somebody got my device, they attempted to add it via configurator, I have 30 days to get it pulled back out of Business Manager or School Manager before it's stuck in there for the full time and has to be removed by an administrator. But again, this will be a great opportunity if you've got those devices laying around that you don't have set up in Business Manager to be able to get them in there. Unfortunately, it is iOS 16 and iPadOS 16 only, but still better than where we were a year ago and a great step forward. Something else I wanted to go into too, which is going to play a really big part in terms of really leveling up security as we go forward. This is an interesting session if you have some time. This is what the code is for here on the screen, is manage device attestation. And what this is the act of going above and beyond just a password and saying, if I log into a machine, I'm essentially trusting that machine. John Sutcliffe is logged in and he's entered his password. Managed device attestation is going to the next level where they're identifying factors of a machine. So when I log into that machine also is looking at a certificate server that is saying this machine is who we believe it is, and being able to level up. So I'm both taking a look at who is using the machine and what machine is it before I start to unleash the resources of my organization for allowing trust. There's something interesting in here, the support for automatic certificate management environment, ACME, which throwback, I'm a big Bugs Bunny fan, and ACME and Roadrunner were a huge part of my history. And so when I first saw this acronym, I started to think about the Roadrunner and ACME, and I don't know. I think this is going to be much better than that ACME was. So this is going to be pretty neat as we push forward. But again, you're going to be able to get yourself in a place where you're using both of these things for trust, not just an individual. So if a device does get spoofed, for instance, when you use a combination of the password logging in, but along with the ACME and the device attestation, it's going to say, whoa, this is not the device we thought it was. And that's going to be able to get blocked as we go forward. They've announced this just for iOS, iPadOS now. Again, I have no inside information if this will come for macOS or not, but I have a hunch it probably will. Again, this is a huge step forward for security and how we can really continue to raise the bar on protecting our corporate data, protecting our devices and our users at the end of the day. The other thing I want to mention is iOS supports iPhone 8 Plus, SE2, and SE3s as we go forward. You can install the profile for iOS 16 on an iPhone 7. Speaking from personal experience, it'll install fine, nothing will happen. You'll scratch your head and then go, oh, it's 8 Plus as we go forward that we support it. So again, those are devices you're going to want to be able to start on. We've been installing iOS on, I've got it on iPads, we've got it on iPhones. It's actually been running really, really well. Actually, as has Ventura has been running well for us too. We may or may not have several of our production devices running it, for better or for worse, and having good success so far. Declarative device management. TLDR, this is the next generation of MDM. Craig, do you want to kind of dive into this one? Do you want me to keep going? What?
No, we can talk a little bit about declarative device management here. So last year we had a very quick intro into what they're going to be doing for the future of MDM with declarative device management and allowing it to be utilized with BYOD devices or user enrollment devices. And they said then, that this is something that they were really moving into to kind of look at. And this year they've expanded it. So they've expanded the functionality. So it's no longer just for user enrollment devices. It's now available for automated device enrolled devices, as well as your traditional just manual enrollment here. So for macOS 13, iOS 16, iPadOS 16, and tvOS 16. So we're going to be living in a world where we're going to have two MDM structures for a while. We're going to have what I dubbed MDM v1. We're going to be having that as well as with declarative device management, because we're still going to have to support older devices, and we're going to have to continue to kind of work with both of these. However, any new MDM functionality is now going to be added to the declarative side and not to the old MDM side. So any new functionality that continues to come out is going to be only done in declarative. So we're going to really see a need for devices to continue to upgrade to new OSs when they can, to really kind of get that power and that functionality of all of the new things that are coming. But as it stands right now, there's nothing really necessary from an administrative standpoint, because this is going to be done for you on the back end. So you're not going to have to worry about which MDM version are you using or anything along those lines. And that's going to be pretty key, because in MDM v1, we always have to kind of pull the devices for profiles and for information and things of that nature, where declarative is going to be more asynchronous. It's going to be much more lightweight. It's going to be more on device. So that's going to allow us to do some really, really cool things with predicates and understanding, if something happens on the device, well, you don't have to go ask MDM to download it and install something again. It'll already have it there for you to take place immediately, as opposed to being dependent on servers. So this is the way that we're moving forward with MDM. We are going to be fully involved on this naturally, and as it should, but we are really going to put our development gears in motion here to make sure that we get this out for you soon.
One of the coolest examples with declarative device management, you think about the case today where you've got, you're setting up a new device and you've got VPN profiles you want deployed on there, but you potentially don't want those deployed until the password restrictions have been put in place. So a user has entered a hard password on the device. What you can do with declarative device management is actually deliver all those payloads to the device at one time. And as soon as the payload that enforces the hard password the conditions for that are met, the device itself is going to turn on those VPN profiles as well, install them and make them active for the user. Today, what you would have to do is, again, this is probably something you would do with a flex policy, build a rule, and you'd have to query that machine to say, if this condition is true, now push these additional profiles onto that machine, right? So it takes out a lot of delay. The machine doesn't have to talk to Addigy to be able to make this happen. So there's a lot of really cool, powerful things we're going to be able to do. Again, this is a great session if you want to go listen to it. And again, when you listen to the sessions, you can put them at about 1.5 speed. You get through them fairly quickly, but really get the gist of them out of it as you push through. All right, another big question that we've been hearing since WWDC is Addigy identity and Apple Platform SSO, single sign-on. What does it mean for identity? If you're not familiar with Apple platform single sign-on, what Apple has said is you're no longer going to need an application like Identity where it sits over the top of the Apple login dialog. You're actually going to be able to go straight to the Apple login dialog for macOS, and we're going to be able to build an extension behind that when you use that window to be able to log in, then we work with the IDP to be able to get the necessary information and get you logged in as we go forward. This one, we're doing a lot of deep investigation right now in terms of how we're going to do this and what it means for identity overall. But again, some of the things that this is also going to enable that we've been having a lot of asks about is if I've logged into my Mac, I want to reuse that login if I hit a website or if I go into some of my corporate applications. This solution also allows for that. So you log in one time and then you're logged in to everything inside of your Mac when you get there, if those application providers have provided for that or those website providers have done it. The other thing we're so excited about is no longer we're going to have to put up those web views in Addigy Identity, which have proved to be problematic as we work on different things, being able to get the right form in front of you. And the other thing is it's going to mean you no longer have that. If you're using Identity, you're familiar with this when the machine reboots, you get prompted for your password from the Mac dialog. You have to unlock File Vault, then you get to Identity and do your IDP login to get onto your machine. That goes away. There'll be just one login for your users to be able to get through that as we push forward. So we're really excited about that. And again, this is something you're going to be able to look for as we push through the summer. I don't want to give any timelines in terms of when betas of some of these things will begin to appear, but you can expect support for this certainly on the day that Ventura drops. And I'm from Minnesota, and every time I say Ventura, I think of our former governor, Jesse Ventura, who, if you're not familiar with him, you owe it to yourself to go look him up and get some good entertainment. So what's our timelines look like now that we're nearing we're past the halfway point. We're almost to the halfway point of June. Last week, WWDC, the first betas of macOS and iOS beta became available. You have to be in the Apple Developer Program to get those initial betas. Those betas will become available in the Apple Seed Program around, they had said early in Q3, which typically means early in July. Again, you can join the developer program, you get access to things a little bit sooner. But as those betas became available on Monday, we began installing them on our iOS devices, on our virtual machines, on our test hardware as well. And we started compatibility testing to make sure all the baseline capabilities in Addigy work the way you can expect. We have devices enrolled, the agent works fine. We have run into some issues with self-service that we're working on bug fixes right now. But as you start to install these and start to test with them, please do report any issues you find. We want to get those fixed as quickly as possible so you can spend the summer being able to test with those betas. So when you are ready to roll out Ventura or iOS 16, you know your environment's ready to go along. Next slide will have information on those. So we go through, we do our initial compatibility test. Are you able to enroll a device, unenroll a device, go through automated device enrollment, does identity work? All those things check out. Then we start to go through our broader workflows, installing software, monitoring or remediation, and start to do the deeper sorts of things that you guys do every day as you're working through it, and just making sure all those things work. We're also at the same time right now, we're working on our project definitions. So in terms of how are we going to build this new identity solution? How are we going to start to build declarative management? And then those pieces of capabilities will begin to roll out over the course of the summer. You'll be able to test those in beta mode so they're ready the day iOS 16 drops and the day Ventura drops, so you're ready to go as we push forward. We expect iOS 16, based on past history, late in Q3, followed 1 to 2 weeks later, typically is what we've seen by the latest macOS coming out. There is a Ventura blocker out now for the beta, and there will be more of those coming out as we go through the summer. So if you want to grab that, you can, to prevent people from installing the beta. And we will have a Ventura blocker out, hopefully right ahead of the public release of Ventura. Apple typically releases what they expect to be the final release, what they will call a golden master, right ahead of when they make it publicly available, so that we can have the blocker ready for you when it ships, if you're not ready to roll that out to your machines as we go forward. All right, we're going to stop here for a minute. We've got a number of things here that have great resources. The two on the bottom, Apple Developer Program and Apple Seed Program. This is where you can go to get the betas for macOS and iOS. If you're not a member already, I encourage you to join. The Apple Seed is for all customers. Apple Developer, there's a small fee to be able to join depending on the type of organization you are to be able to get in there. But again, the sooner you get these in your hands, go through the installation process, begin to test those things, the better. We're doing it already, and we will be doing that all summer. And we are already adding the new operating systems into our regular testing. So the new features we're working on, as they come out through the summer, we are testing on these already as we go forward. The top links, you can see the macOS 13 release notes. Apple does a nice job of keeping these updated. Every time a new beta comes out, they'll talk about what bugs they fixed, what bugs are there if there are known issues. The same for the iOS and iPad 16 release notes as well. Keeping your eye on those is fantastic. Apple Seed Guides has amazing documentation. There's a great, fairly quick read, what's new in managing devices that goes along with the presentation, the opening presentation on managing Apple devices. I'd encourage you to read that. There's a really deep dive into the new platform single sign-on if you want to get into the guts of that. There are testing plans that Apple includes in there as well. If you want to go through, they've done a nice job of building a spreadsheet of test A, test B, test C, so you can have a nice checklist to be able to push forward. I'll give this a couple more seconds. If you haven't already done it, we will have a recording of this as well. So, Q&A. What have we got? It looks like a lot of the questions we've been seeing have already been answered. Craig, do you have more you'd like to add on this?
So let's let me go through these a little bit here. I have answered quite a bit of them. So let's go ahead here. So one of the interesting questions that Ross brought up was around when we're talking about software update priority, are these sorts of settings going to be per device or per policy actions? Now, I don't think we've gotten into the execution details on a lot of this yet, and that's there, but it is something that is very interesting to talk about when we look at software update priorities and them being per device and per policy actions, since we have through go live and through the policy. So very interesting question there that was brought up. Let's take a look also too. Maybe you might want to give a little more context on this. Is a question around conditional access. Is there any update on support with Azure conditional access?
Yes. Looking at how to phrase this, we are deep in development. We may have information flowing between Addigy servers and Microsoft servers, and looking to begin very early betas very soon. I'm tiptoeing a little bit here because I don't want to go too far, but yes, this is daylight will soon be shining on this for you to be able to get your hands on. And it's going to be actually a little bit more broad than just conditional access with Intune. We've got some really exciting things that are coming with this.
That's definitely a lot more nuance than I gave. I said, yes, there is a lot of movement. So we've already gone above and beyond.
Yeah, well, you know me, TLDR is not in my name.
Question here around platform SSO. Is platform SSO replacing the existing SSO MDM configuration that can or should work with Microsoft or Google? Should we keep both around to support Monterey and earlier devices? I do want to jump in and say that Platform SSO is not replacing the SSO MDM configuration. It's actually utilizing it more. So there are two new keys inside of the extensible enterprise SSO MDM configuration that will be directly related to working with platform SSO. So keep that in mind. That extensible enterprise SSO MDM configuration will be used by platform SSO. John, to you on this one, any plan to include passkeys for Addigy authentication for Addigy.com? What about with Addigy identity?
Maybe. And TLDR, I think so. So we're focused right now on getting our head wrapped around platform SSO, and we want to get that understood first, and then we want to look at the passkey stuff on top of it. So I believe so. There's more work for us to do there on those lines.
Awesome. One that I'll take here, any thoughts on Apple Watch configuration and things like configuration of family sharing environments? As it stands right now, no. We don't have any plans or any thoughts around any of the Apple Watch configurations. And you know, as of right now, we're really focused primarily on just things that came out for macOS, iOS, iPadOS, and tvOS. WatchOS potentially in the future, but today not on that roadmap. So we did see a screenshot of system preferences and how it's changed. And we know that there's some things that are going to be changing for the management of that. So John, what are your thoughts on the changes to the login items, launch agents, and launch daemons being visible to users and for them to disable? You know, what happens if a user turns off the Addigy launch agent? Do we have any kind of information around that?
This is something we may file feedback on fairly quickly here. So here's what my expectation would be, which is different than what we see right now. Again, this goes to when Craig mentioned earlier that there are things that will be rolling out over the course of the summer as they increment on. I would expect some new controls, MDM controls around what users can do in that area of the product. And I would expect they would let us block that as owners, that they couldn't turn those off. I can't believe, I shouldn't say that. There are a lot of things that I couldn't believe would have happened. It doesn't feel right that it would just be based on, is this user an admin or not? Because again, I know in a lot of environments, we do have to let our users be admins. And if they could flip this stuff off, that would be devastating, right? In the case of a managed device, they go off, they turn their antivirus off, they turn off Addigy, go right down the list, their firewalls, et cetera, et cetera. So I got to believe that there's controls coming for that. We just haven't seen it yet. But it will be something to pay close attention to as we go forward.
So one thing I can kind of see here too is that maybe they introduce something like, and God forbid I say the word PPPC, but maybe they allow for some sort of payload that allows you to auto approve them and allow them to go through. I can see that happening for sure, but we'll definitely be keeping a close eye on it. And in some of our testing too, if you turn off those launch agents or those launch daemons and restart, they still run. So I don't know if that's still a bug right now in the beta or not, but in some of our testing, that's what we've been seeing. So basically TLDR, there's more to this that we'll see later, for sure.
Those are great questions. Yeah, we're scratching our heads on all these things. And again, the other thing I'd encourage you to is, as you're doing testing like this, we've got the Addigy Mac Admins channel. We have the Addigy integrations channels too, or if you just, as you're having these thoughts, be dropping them in there as well, so we can all be kind of thinking about it and sharing it, make sure we've got our eyes on it. And also don't hesitate to follow feedback yourself with Apple as you go through the process. This is a great time to be able to get information in front of them. And they're doing a lot of change right now, so they're really open to being able to get things taken care of as we push through.
So we briefly talked about, having a beta program for the topic we danced a little bit around with conditional access. But how could one be included into that beta program if we were to start one in time? What would be the process for that?
Couple things: email product@addigy.com and raise your hand. Number two, the way our beta programs work is, again, we've got several phases. One is private beta, where it's more, we'll start to reach out to people who've expressed interest in a part of the product that's coming into beta, talk to them about it, see if they'd like to join. Part two is when you go into account settings and you see our betas listed there, and you can go in and enable it yourself, join, and put feedback on it. So that's part two of the beta. And then we get to the point where we'll release it. This part of the product will go through that full beta cycle as we push. So you can expect to see more on it along those lines. Also, if you're not already a member in the Addigy integration Slack, that's our own private Slack. Make sure you join that. I don't have the URL handy. Maybe somebody could toss that in the chat for us to be able to sign up, because we will talk about when we're doing private betas. We'll mention it in there if people are interested in signing up.
Yeah, so let me add this here to the chat. I'm gonna, if you do want to be a part of that Addigy integrations Slack instance with us, you can. Here it is in chat. One of the things that is good to talk about while we're in this is NDAs, John, especially without being an Apple beta. So can we talk a little bit about what can we talk about in public Slack, so Mac admins, that sort of thing? What can we talk about in Addigy integrations? I would assume that as long as you're under reciprocal NDAs, you can speak about them together. But can we dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, so this has gotten a little more interesting in the last few years, because all the WWD sessions are public. You don't have to sign an NDA to watch them. You just go to their website and watch. So anything they talk about in those sessions, you can go ahead and talk about. We can talk about them in open forums. If we start to get into the details of how something works under the hood in the operating system, we'd probably say, hey, why don't we take this offline and go there to be able to talk about it. But again, it's so much of this is in public already. It's a fine line in terms of where we go. But again, if we have to get in the nitty-gritty on something, we'd just say, hey, let's take this offline and go from there.
Awesome. So it looks like we've kind of talked through quite a bit of the questions here and kind of gone through. So we do have a little bit of time left here for the webinar, but I wanted to see if you want to close us out.
Yeah, I got a couple more slides because TLDR, not in my nature. Next step. So our next sudo talks coming up in the middle of July. Unfortunately, you're going to get some of me, but I'm also going to be joined by Max Mills from our support team. And we're going to be talking a lot about what some of our top customers do to help improve their productivity within Addigy. Things like what are they monitoring or remediating? How are they using self-service? Things like that. We're going to be focused around how can you automate your everyday job so you can go do more of the fun stuff. If you want to see a demo, addigy.com/watchdemo. This is not my phone number. Craig, I'm guessing this is you. Call Craig, he'll hook you up. And thank you. We'll wait like 30 more seconds for another question. There will be, this is being recorded if you want to play it back. I hope you got a lot of value out of this. If you have more questions, don't hesitate to shoot them to us. Again, product@addigy.com comes to Craig and I, as well as the other product managers. Check out the betas that we've got running in Addigy right now, and we really encourage you, if you do use them, go into the feedback form, and besides just putting a star on it, share thoughts. What's good? What could work better? We really get a ton of value out of the comments you put into those. And depending if you do have questions or things too, we'll reach back out to be able to talk to you in more detail. So again, thank you so much for your time today. Look forward to an exciting summer. Hope everybody gets a little bit of rest and relaxation and can get Ventura to work successfully come this fall. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you later.